Well, Big Mo, how you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good.
Good. Well,
Doing
thanks
pretty
for
good.
joining the Fit Archer podcast. I've been excited to. I was a little nervous to reach out to you, to be honest, because we don't necessarily know each other. But I thought the other day, I'm like, what the heck? You'll either say yeah or you'll say no. But I know you got a lot of wisdom I'd like to pull from you. So I sent you a message. You said, yeah, we can do it. So here we are. I appreciate you jumping on the podcast.
I mean, the thing is that, you know, I've seen you on Instagram, I see your posts, I've reached out to you a couple times. We go back and forth or whatever. So there's no reason why not to do something like this. And, if I can help somebody, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, well,
Happy
that's
to do
good. Well, what we cover on here, as you probably know, is all hunting, all fitness, all the time. And I'm a big time. Well, I'm not a big time hunter. I love to hunt. I'm obsessed with it. I'm not big time because I'm not real great at it. I just love to do it. I've done it since I've been about 4 years old. So, a long time, 39 years. I've been in the woods and doing stuff. And you got animals all over behind you. You got a ton of success. I can't wait to hear about. And yeah, you've been every time I put anything on Instagram, and lately I've been putting some things up about shooting. I was always hoping you'd chime in, because I know that you're dialed in, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. You're dialed in with your shooting, and you've done some amazing things and killed some great animals at pushing good distance, and we'll talk about that too. So I'm always excited when you chime in and give me some advice. We just talked about that, off the air a little bit, some of the stuff that you helped me with, so I appreciate it.
No, I mean, like I said, I'm here to help. You know what I mean? In today's day and age, when you get on social media and stuff like that, there's a few people that generally, are trying to look for help or whatever. And if there's something that I can help them with, I just try not to, don't want to sound arrogant or anything like that. I just kind of want to help them out, and hopefully they better themselves.
Yeah. So tell us about yourself. I'm gonna call you Big Mo. I'll probably call you Miguel. I'll call you Mike. You said you've been called worse. So just tell us about yourself. Where do you live? How did you grow up, and how did you get into hunting and that kind of thing?
Well, I was born and raised here in Nogales, Arizona. I did mostly I was rifle hunting with my dad. That's how I started off hunting, was with my father. And he still hunts to this day. He never really picked up a bow, but we definitely go out there and give it heck whenever we can. And so I took off I've always had this thing. I used to see, I had this neighbor that I would always see him shooting in his backyard, with a bow. And it was just something that always interests me. And my dad kind of, fed the fire a little bit. He got me a couple of bows. One was a PSE Spirit. We still have it to this day. It was probably a long time ago, and just started off, doing stuff like that. And then I took off to the Marine Corps, and I had, it was kind of a blessing that, in San Diego, there's a shop over there, Performance Archery, with Bob Fromm. Dude's a killer, man. I mean, he killed all 29 species. He had he's had world record animals. I mean, guy can really get it done. And, I used to go there just every weekend and just kind of, I'm sure I bothered him too. I mean, it was one of those things where I was there all the time, and just kind of seeing and going and picked up, I got another bow and just started shooting and started hunting, and, all of a sudden came home and was able to put it together on a deer. And, it's just progressive, man. I mean, it's just something that's always interested me, and I just had a really good time doing it, and it's just a constant, it's like you talk to people and they're like, oh man, you do this or you do that. And it's like, you don't see the triumphs. All you see is your shortcomings, and you're just constantly trying to get it going to where you're at a higher level. And that's just what I've been doing for the, past 20 years that I've been hunting seriously with a bow.
So does it ever surprise you that Bob Fromm, who I've been following ever since you could really follow somebody, even way before social media, I used to watch some of his videos. My brother moved to Las Vegas way back in '96, and he told me about Bob Fromm. You know, he shot long bows with fingers back then. But to have a shop as successful as his and to do what he's done in San Diego, California, just doesn't seem like that makes sense, does it?
You know what? I mean, he's from there, does a lot of surfing, plays a lot of tennis, but he gets after it, man. I mean, he gets after it, and you know, people think, oh, well, you just go out there and you just kill an animal. There's a lot more to it than that. You know, when you get into that stage of the game, it's really, you know, there's a lot of research that goes into it. There's a lot of, you know, dude, it's just eye-opening the amount of stuff that he knows. So it's been, you know, I still keep in touch with him, and we still, you know, we have a good time. He's come out to hunt out here with me, you know, once, and so we've maintained the relationship.
That's really cool. That's really cool. So your first hunts, as you got going into it, come back to Nogales. You know, I have a big listener base back in the Midwest because that's where I'm originally from as well. They will probably never ever understand the beauty that you live in. I've stayed down in Nogales a few times because my good friend Nick DeBaca, who you guys have communicated back and forth, one of Dwayne Adams' guides. They do a lot of hunting down that area. So we'd always stay at I think it was the Motel 6 in Nogales. And then we would hunt some of those units down there. Man, you are in Coues deer, mule deer heaven. I mean, kind of explain to some listeners that don't know, you know, that part of the country, or, you know, where that is. What's that like growing up there? I mean, that's a blessing growing up there.
There's no mule deer and there's no Coues deer down here. So. Forget it.
That's right. That's right. Just grizzly bears. Just grizzly bears. Stay out of here.
No, it's been, you know, it seems like, in all reality, like the mule deer haven't been doing that. When I first started hunting 20 years ago, I remember seeing huge bucks, huge mule deer bucks all over the place. I was just never good enough to get one, you know. But it was one of those things where, you know, Coues deer kind of took over for a while, and I've just been hunting them ever since. But the thing is that there's just a lot of country all over the place. You know, I mean, you go half hour in either direction from Nogales, and you know, there's a lot of country to cover. You know, I mean, it really has been a blessing. You know, and the thing is that, you know, I do a little bit of guiding. And you'll see these people that, you know, they come from all over to hunt, you know, the diminutive Coues deer, you know, and it's been an eye-opening experience seeing what everybody else thinks of, you know, this area and stuff like that. Because when you see it day in, day out, you know, it doesn't seem that special. But when you go out and you actually, you know, you see what you see and you compare it to what other people have seen, you know, you see that there is something special down here.
Well, I'll talk from the Midwest standpoint, because I grew up in Wisconsin and lived there till I was 38 years old. So 7 years ago, I moved here to Phoenix. So growing up, you know, we're hunting big Eastern whitetails, Midwest whitetails. So big, 200 pounds, field dressed, you know, beautiful animals, and just big racks, you know, 150 plus racks. You know, you get a 160, 170 inch buck, whitetail buck back in the Midwest, and you're talking mega giants. So when I moved down here, my friend Nick, who we'd been friends for a long time, he started talking about Coues deer. And I could never wrap my mind around. You see a lot, this happen a lot with people from the East and the Midwest. All they want to chase is mule deer. So when I moved down, all I wanted to chase was mule deer. I'm like, I want the big racks, the big deer, you know, the strip, the kaibab bucks everybody hears from the Midwest.
Right.
And then I went and, you know, Nick was guiding some hunting. Actually, my son drew a tag, and I got him to go with Nick, and Nick took us out and we're hunting some Coues deer. And I'll tell you, I don't care the size of a Coues deer. I absolutely fell in love with everything about Coues deer. Now, I bow hunt a lot up this way because I am in Phoenix, so I don't come bow hunting your way a lot because it's just quite a ways out of the way. So I'm bow hunting a lot of mule deer, central Arizona, although there's some good Coues deer hunting. But there is nothing like picking up your big glass and trying to pick a hillside apart and find these little Coues deer. I mean, it's absolutely addicting. I tell all my friends, and they're like, well, that's that little whitetail, ain't it? And that's what I used to call it. that little whitetail. But they're a different animal to hunt. That is for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they are, you know, a lot of people will tell you that they're arguably one of the most difficult animals to hunt, you know, period, with a rifle or bow. And, you know, I kind of have been spoiled in that regard, that I've, you know, one of the toughest animals is right here in my backyard, and I get to, you know, chase them every year, you know. So it's been, you know, it is a blessing, you know. I mean, you go and you hunt mule deer, you know, like, you know, I've gone up to, you know, Utah and Colorado and stuff like that, and you can get away with a lot more than what you can if you were Coues deer hunting. So it's it really keeps you sharp, that's for sure.
Yeah.
On
So
the spot.
basically, the better Coues deer hunter you are, just the better you're going to be in general, because they're, you know, we got to my son's Coues deer. Well, it's up in his room. I can't show it. My son's Coues deer, he shot a couple years ago. He was gun hunting it, and he was 11 or 12 at the time. So bow hunting really wasn't, he's not really into bow hunting. He's getting more into bow hunting now. But we were on a rifle hunt, and we stopped at that 300-yard mark. And I mean, man, that deer was on us. Like, trying to close that distance from 300 in seems to be like, you know, every animal's got his comfort zone. You get some of those desert mule deer, and they'll let you get to 150. That's, you know, maybe 180. That's their comfort zone. And then all of a sudden they're just going to keep their distance. Coues deer, not so much. So to get on them takes some skill.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, I mean, you kind of know what you can get away with. You know, I've had a pretty good feel of what I can and can't get away with, but like I said, it just surprises me what I can get away with some of those other, you know, like the other places that I go hunt. So it's like, I mean, there's other factors involved, you know. I mean, you know, like I know in Colorado, man, it was just steep stuff, you know, and high altitude, and it was just an ass kicker. But, you know, the thing is that the animal itself is not as difficult to hunt, you know, as a Coues deer.
You know, before I keep going and hunting, it just popped into my mind, Nogales. There's Nogales, Mexico, and Nogales, Arizona, right? Right in the. So we're big into baseball, and not only does Nogales have incredible hunting, but you guys produce out of Nogales some of the most phenomenal baseball players I've ever seen. So I helped coach my son's baseball team. It was last year or the year before. We had a team from Nogales who just traveled back from. I don't know where they were. They've been traveling state to state, and they had more fun playing baseball than anybody they've seen. They were not big kids. They weren't like the typical, when you're 13, 14, you know, 12, 13, 14, usually your bigger kids are your better kids. They just matured a little bit earlier in baseball. And these kids weren't, matter of fact, we're a smaller team, and they were our size, if not smaller. And I've never seen a team hit like them in my life. They 10-run rule less than 3 innings. There's probably 15-run rules. I mean, it wasn't even funny. How two strike, they were the best 2-strike hitters I've ever seen. Middle to right side, just line drive. And they were having more fun. They walked through and 10-run ruled every single team in that tournament. And when they 10-run that team in the finals, that was a team that rarely ever gets beat in the Valley. This was a dominant team up here. And your Nogales team absolutely destroyed them. And, you know, we got to talk to some of the coaches and stuff. And he's like, yeah, we just got back from Colorado. We won this tournament. And he goes, these kids just love to have fun. And they all had their bump songs. So when they came up, they had their music going, and they're dancing on their way up there. And of course, some of our parents and our kids they're looking at like they're mad. And we got done with that game, and I said, I've never had more fun getting beat than by that team. My wife and I still talk about them, like, because they were playing baseball and sports the right way. They were having a ton of fun doing it. So I never talked to anybody from Nogales. So it's always been on my mind. I have to tell you, you guys put out some amazing baseball players too. So I don't know if you know any of them.
I know they've been in the paper a few times for their baseball exploits, you know, so.
Oh man,
it's good to see.
They're incredible. So let's, here's so I've been following you for quite a long time, since I've been on Instagram. And actually Nick DeBaca was the one who turned me on to you. He's like, man, you got to follow Big Mo 101 on Instagram. And I'd encourage everybody to follow him. He's like, he is killing Coues deer every single year. And so to tell some listeners that don't understand the big Coues deer, maybe explain what a good Coues deer is. Again, you get Midwest and you get a I think 135 inches is Pope and Young for a Midwestern whitetail. 167, I think, is Boone and Crockett's. You know, that's big. I'm not sure what a Pope and Young Coues deer is, what size it is.
I think it's like 65 or 70 or something like that. But the Boone and Crockett for Coues deer is 110 typical. And so if you shoot a deer with a rifle, that's actually that's Boone and Crockett all time. 100 inches is Boone and Crockett, you know, where they it's kind of like a honorable mention type of thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's you kill a deer that's 100 inches or better, that's considered a pretty nice Coues deer.
Yeah, and so somebody from the Midwest is thinking 100 inches. That's small. Boy, that's a big Coues deer.
Yeah.
That's a really good Coues deer. I think Dwayne has, I've been down to Dwayne's many times, Dwayne Adams. I think he's got like when he first started doing it, he had like one of the top Coues deer that was ever shot. He shot like 30 some years ago, whatever it was. It was like a 140 Coues deer. Yeah. There's guys in Wisconsin that don't even breathe at 140 inch whitetail. You get out here at 140 inch Coues deer, and that thing that's getting paraded around the Southwest for a long time.
That's ginormous. That's ginormous. That is like once in a lifetime type animal.
That's incredible. And they look, they are, I have one of my Midwestern whitetails. I have a 142 inch 8-pointer. So he's a big 8-pointer sitting up in my room on the wall. Well, it's not on the wall yet, and I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's a good looking deer. But then I walk into my son's room and it's probably a 70 some inch 3-point Coues deer they shot. And I'm like, I would much rather look at that Coues deer. It's a prettier deer. And I know my friends are going to be mad at me that I say that, but they're a really pretty deer too.
You know what? And they are, you know, they're just, what's really nice is when you get to see them interacting with each other. You see, you know, the buck that just kind of dwarfs the doe, and doe is just so sleek, you know, just a beautiful animal, you know, and couple that with the ability to you just don't know how many times I've been in the glass looking, and then I get out of the glass just to clear my eyes or sneeze or something, and I go back in, he's gone. Where'd he go? What happened? Takes me 10, 15 minutes just to be, oh, okay, he laid down. Oh, okay, he went behind this tree. It's just, I mean, it's just an incredible animal to be hunting, you know, and like you said, I really do enjoy looking at them.
Yeah, they don't call them the gray ghost for nothing. But so Nick told me, he said, JP, you got to follow this Big Mo 101 on Instagram. He goes, he is killing 100 inch Coues deer every year with his bow. And I'm like, what? Like, I mean, you know, I wasn't doubting it. I'm just like, my what was like, what? I got to follow this guy. Like, I want to see what he's doing. I just want to look at the animals, and then seeing the distances that you're shooting them at, which I think is incredible. And it tells me one thing: you're dialed in, you're meticulous, you've got it figured out. So maybe tell me about, give me some tips maybe that you kind of walk through. If I'm a newer hunter and I decide I want to, because obviously if we're going to do it with bow hunting, it's spot and stalk, and, you know, we get a chance to hunt them in the pre-rut, in the rut here, which is to our advantage. What are some things that you would tell a newer guy like me, you know, that to watch out for? What are some things that you've learned over the years of, and I think you were on a string of 7 years in a row. You did that 7 years in a row, 100 inch buck every year. You might be on 8 years. You might be on 9 years. I'm not sure what it is, but
I'm on 8 years. I actually passed up a couple of 105 inch deer this year because I got 14 bonus points. So I might try my luck at maybe trying to get a strip tag or something like that.
You don't want to put in for the strip, do you? No, you don't want to put in. I'm only at 10, so I don't want any more competition.
Well, you know, that's one of the reasons that I just kind of, well, you know, I mean, I got a couple of those, so maybe I should try and see what I can do as far as the mule deer goes. You know, I mean, I shot a 180 inch mule deer back in 2009 down here that I was pretty happy with. But, you know, the times of seeing those type of animals, you know, they're few and far between. You know, I mean, it's like, if you see something, if you're serious about hunting mule deer down here and you see something in the 160, you might want to shoot it, you know, because it's just not something that you see a whole lot anymore, you know. But I think as far as Coues deer goes, glass is the number one thing. If you're going to spend money on anything, spend it on glass, because that creates opportunities. And, you know, it's just kind of like uh, the more opportunities you create, it's just more chances that you'll be able to walk into a situation that actually will pan out, you know. It's kind of like, you know, I used to be a recruiter, and it was all about, you know, sales was all about making phone calls. The more phone calls you made, the more people you talked to, the more appointments you made, the more. So it just has to do with being able to have volume of animals to choose from, you know. So that's one of the big things. You got to have good glass, you know, and and if you're going to spend money on anything else and you're a bow hunter, you know, you can get a used bow, but get the best arrows you can get with the best broadheads you can get. That's what's going to make the trip over there and put the animal on the ground. I think that you really need to spend some good money on that. I think the whole thing about shooting, you know, hunting these guys is trying to make good on any opportunity that you have. And because Lord knows you, sometimes you need quite a few of them.
So
But
what are you running for glass? Like obviously you're talking tripod. Then what do you run on around your neck?
right now I use I was using the Leicas, the 10x42s, the Geovids, but right now I'm using the SIGs. But as far as glassing goes, I use the Swarovski, two Swarovski spotting scopes on the plate, and that has really, I've been running that for about, I guess, 15 years now, and it's kind of hard to I haven't found anything better really. So, you know, like I
Yeah,
said, you can get up high and you can really pick apart stuff and really be able to see what's going on, you know.
yeah. Those dual spotters. Nick just puts them together. He puts some dual spotters. I've always had a spotting scope, and I have the 15s, the Swarovski 15s, and those are great. We went out this last fall. We went into New Canyon, and you know we both had our 15. Or I had my 15s on. I'm kind of glass in the canyon. I'm colorblind, so I don't. I always tell Nick, don't go by what I saw, because a lot of animals, I can't. The contrast of their
Right.
color just doesn't stick out as much. I got to see movement more than I can just pick deer out. And so I glassed this canyon. I'm like, I'm not seeing nothing. And he said, you got to look through these dual spotters. And so he put them up, and he's putting them up, and he's going to adjust the eyepiece on them just to kind of try to shrink him in for me, because he's a little bit wider eyed than I am. And all of a sudden he goes, oh my gosh, there's a buck. And it would have been very, very tough for me to find them with my 15s. Matter of fact, we went up to a high point. He was going to do the stalk on it, and he struggled to find them with the 15s. But those dual spotters, it was night and day difference. So that's my next gig, is to get another spotter and a plate and mount them side by side.
Well,
That's just a game changer.
I got these a little bit after, because Dwayne had a set of these, and back then it was a guy out of either Delaware or Rhode Island. Randy Yon was the guy's name that made the plates. He's since retired and stuff like that, you know. But it was Dwayne Adams and Rob Robertson that had the first sets that I knew of twin spotters, and I ended up getting a set. Me and another friend of mine, and I've just stuck with them ever since. You know, I went from, we had the 20 fixed powers back then. You don't see those anymore. But then I ended up getting the 25 to 50 wide angle zoom lenses, the eyepieces, and that's, you know, it works. It definitely works.
It's pushing
You
your
know,
distance to see well past a mile. I mean, 2 mile. How
dude,
far do you
I've
think you're
gone to
seeing?
deer at probably closer to 3.
Oh man, I mean, just talk about letting your eyes do the work for you.
And that's exactly it. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, when I first started hunting, we used to just cover ground. It was just like, we used to be ground pounders, you know, just keep going, and eventually you'll jump something. But you know, I'm never seen the amount of animals walking as I have glassing, and that's something that has stuck with me for quite a long time, you know. And with spotters, just get up higher, get up further. You can see what's out there, and then you can say, okay, well, now I can glass from this other point and do this other thing. And that way you can get a better vantage point to be able to be, in order to get within striking range, But, sometimes I think, as far as tips go, bide your time, be patient, but when it's time to go, go.
Mm.
That's kind of one of the things that's, once you see the situation where it's going to pan out, where, and I've had quite a bit of experience messing it up. So, you kind of you see a situation, it's like, well, this has worked in the past, get on it. If it's not working, if it's not something that's worked out in the past, there's no point in going over there and blowing out the animal type of thing, So that, being able to glass them up, the more animals you get to see, the more you get to learn from past experiences,
Right. So you switched from the Leicas to the SIGs. How come? What was the kind of deciding factor there? I've never used either of them. My brother has Leicas 10 by 42s, loves them, but the new SIGs are really coming on. Multiple pieces that they have.
Well, I have that right now. I have those SIGs, the 3000, the binoculars, and one of the reasons that I ended up going to that one is that when I guide, I usually have my own rifle that I give that I let the clients use, and I use a Kestrel, and that connects with Bluetooth to the SIG, and it just makes for quick acquisition of the of the information you need. So that's kind of why I made the switch. I still have the Leicas, but I mostly use the SIGs.
And those are 10 by 42s? Are those 10 by 42s? Yeah, and you find those to be good enough to, once I mean, are they big enough, more powerful enough for you?
Well, the glass isn't as good as the Leica, but I don't really use them to glass all that much. I'm usually using the dual spotters, the big eyes.
Yeah, makes sense. So, all right, you're up on a high point. You got your dual spotters. You find a buck 1.5 miles out. I know every scenario is different. I'm just kind of going generic here. Just some tips. Selfishly, I'm trying to learn here, but okay. Other people are as well. So I see a buck feeding. Obviously we get to hunt them in the rut sometimes, and so they might be running does. Gives us a little bit of better opportunity. But what is it you're looking for when you say I'm looking for that opportunity to go? What is it? Something maybe from a generic standpoint that you'd say, hey, this would be a indicator that it's time to get off this mountain, close the distance, and try to make a move on
him. One scenario that I really like, that I usually go after the animal, it's when the doe is bedded and that buck is fighting off other bucks. When they're fighting off other bucks, you can get away with murder on them. And that's because there's so much movement, there's so much noise. Half the time they don't even know that you're there. They think that it's another small buck that they got to fight off, so they're not ready to take off. And even if they do make you out, they won't leave the doe. I mean, it's you got to bump them pretty bad for them to leave that doe. So sometimes, that doe is kind of bedded in a cut or whatever. Man, you can get away with a lot.
So is there certain terrain you obviously know the country now, but certain terrain that you like better for spot and stalk? We hunt all different kind of terrain down here, but obviously Coues are sometimes a little bit more in the higher elevations, but I don't know down by you, is there a better terrain you like?
I mean, you get into the rolling hills, and that's basically what you need, just some broken up terrain. If you get in the flats, it gets to be real difficult just to be able to get landmarks and stuff like that. It's really difficult to get it. You get in the trees, in the flats, it makes for a tough hunt, especially if you're by yourself. Even if you got somebody that can guide you in or whatever, sometimes it's pretty difficult to do stuff in the flats. But it's one of those things where if you can say, okay, you know what, I got these landmarks. If I get to here, and we should be able to get it done, that's when you go in. If you're like, man, I don't think I can see that. I don't think I can really get over there. You know, whatever the thing is, if there's doubts, you got to figure them out before you go, because once you're there, it's too late. You know what I mean? You can't, you know, I mean, there's guys that would take pictures of the terrain and say, okay, this is a deer, you know, and kind of try and have like a picture there that'll kind of guide them a little bit. But once you come up, you know, if you're coming up from behind the hill to try and come up and over or anything like that, you really have to have, you know, your landmarks really well placed. If not, it's really difficult to try and put it together once you're there, type of thing. You know what I mean? So I've hunted all over. The only thing that I really don't like is the really dense stuff, just because, you know, the optics aren't as effective. But if you can see them, you can kill them, type of thing, you know? So if for some reason, you know, you feel that you can't make a stock, you know, that's a good time to kind of sit there, watch them, see what they do, see what their habits are, see where they like to go, you know? I mean, it's just more information that you can gather, but don't ever feel that it's necessary to be able to, that if you see the animal, it beds, oh, I got to go after it. That can be a recipe for disaster pretty quick if other things aren't in line, you know? It's difficult to say, okay, this is what I look for. It's just kind of one of those things where I see it. I've seen it before. I see their mannerisms. I see that they're digging out their bed, or I see that they've gotten up 2 or 3 times. I see that they're going to go bed in an area where the sun is going to be, the shade is going to be there a lot longer, things of that nature. That's when you kind of say, okay, that's when you have more time to get over there. With a rut, I really look for that doe, because if the doe is up and he starts chasing, you know, you might as well just wait until she's tired, and because they'll go all over the place, and there's no telling where they'll go, you know. But it's just a question of going out there and really seeing what can happen. You know, you see the scenarios, see how they play out, kind of put them in your memory bank and kind of feed off of that in the future, you know. But,
that's good stuff. Really, really good tips. You said something that makes me want to ask this question. Are you typically hunting solo, or are you having some help? You know, spot and stalk out here, sometimes without somebody, the moment you jump off the point, you lose them. You know, are you hunting solo, or are you hunting tag team, someone walking you in?
I do both. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's been kind of half type of thing, you know, where some of the deer I killed with somebody that was with me, and some of them I was with, you know, I was by myself, you know. So it's just, you can't, obviously when you have a partner, it's awesome. And if you don't have a partner, well, I'm not going to stay home. So got to get after it, you know.
You got to hunt when you can hunt. What
Yeah.
about bedded bucks? So you love the scenario when a buck has ran a doe a lot. All of a sudden she starts to park it. She's going to sit, and he's going to fight off other bucks, you know, as he's kind of tending her a little bit. What about a bedded buck? I've heard different scenarios from people. They don't get into bedded bucks. They love them when they're bedded. How about you on a bedded Coues?
You have to really kind of take a look at where he's bedded. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times they get into that thick stuff. If you can see him, if you could see that he's bedded or whatever, and kind of have some shooting lanes, yeah, I'll go after him. But at the end of the day, you have to let the deer make the last move. You know, their vision is keen, especially when there's movement. And if you're trying to get in position to try and shoot him in his bed, chances are you're probably going to blow him out. At least in my experience, you know, I'm sure guys have done it. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but for me, I have a higher success rate when I just let them get up and do their thing, and then you just kind of zip an arrow through them.
Well, it seems to be My last podcast, I had Greg Krogh on, and he was talking about Randy Ulmer and Jason Campbell, and if I'm forgetting the other guy's name, Jack Brittingham. Some of these guys that just are killing giant mule deer. And he
Yeah.
said that, he goes, when they first started doing it, they used to call it scouting escapades, like scouting safaris, because he said we could never get these big deer killed. And he said that we started going with some of these guys that were real killers that had some stalking abilities. What he noticed was they would get to that 150-yard mark on a bedded buck, and then they would wait. And then, that was far enough away typically where, as when you're waiting an animal out, whatever it is, the wind's always swirling out here. You're
Right.
in rolling hills, and you can just never get a solid wind unless you're up on top of a ridge. But he would get to that 150-yard mark. These great stalkers that they were hunting with. And then when the deer got up, it only took them a few minutes to close the distance to where they were. But if they tried to push in past that, 150, 100-yard mark on a bedded buck, typically they were getting bumped. So, exactly what you're saying is the reason you're doing it. You're letting that buck make the mistake instead of you make the mistake.
Yeah, usually I try and kind of get within my effective range when I do bed down, when I do kind of sit down and wait on them. So that way I have a shot when they get up. But you really have to take a look at the wind and what it's doing. That's something else that, you never really want to do it in the, right in the morning, because winds change, direction changes, a lot of things can happen. So you kind of, for me, it's all about just getting within my max effective range and just wait him out, let him make the last move. And, I'm not going to say works every time, but I definitely up my chances by doing that.
So what time of the day are you typically, or if you had an average, if you're not doing it right away in the morning, which, we always know we can find them the best in the morning, they're more active. What do you have an average time of the day that you're killing, the last 8 bucks that you've killed, you killed way more than 8, but the last 8 over 100, do you have an average time?
Not really. Not really. It's just, it is what it is. Sometimes it's just a chance encounter, and, I was able to get the shot. There's other times that I sat on them. There's other times that, it just kind of, most of the time I kill them the 3rd week of January. That's when I do most of my killing. But with that being said, the time of day, because they're rutting, because they're doing all this other stuff, is very difficult to say, this is when I usually, if I'm stalking where it's not really a rut based, usually it'll be about 2 or 3 o'clock, something like that. You know what I mean? When I kill the animals, most of my animals.
So 3rd week of January, I would have thought it'd been closer to 1st week. I would have thought it'd be more in there. So at your area you're hunting, it's all different. You got north, kind of the mid Arizona, central Arizona Coues deer. Then you get, your southern Arizona Coues deer. Obviously they rut different. What stage of the rut is that for you? Is that peak rut, post rut? Is it tailing off at that point? Peak?
They're on it. They're usually on it. That's when they're really tending the does and stuff like that. I've killed a few bucks that way. It's really when they're most vulnerable, in my opinion.
Okay. So the bucks that you killed, these last 8 bucks that you killed, all within what I'm getting at with this question is, are you finding a lot of these bigger bucks are in the same location? Have you killed in multiple different units, different areas of that unit? Or are you locked in an area like, hey, this is a big buck area, and I kill one out and another one funnels in?
Yes.
Yes, and if there's something you don't want to answer, I certainly never want to give away anything where you hunt.
The reason I say that is because, I've killed them in different units. I have killed them in the same spot. It's just burning gas, man, and glassing, and just where you find them, you find them. You know what I mean? It's really difficult to say, yeah, I'm just gonna hunt this spot and I'll kill a big buck every year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you just gotta cover ground, man, and you gotta burn gas, and you gotta spend time on top of the hill, and so that way you see what's there. There was one point in time before I started killing these big bucks, I used to, a friend of mine and myself, we used to cover like a lot of ground. I mean, all the way from the Babakiris all the way to past the Huachucas. And we were burning a lot of gas. But that year we found 10 bucks that were over 110. And we killed, my buddy killed one of the ones that was kind of middle of the road. He was the one in the middle of the pack, and he ended up scoring like 124 or something like that. So there's big bucks to be had all over the place. It's just that you got to get out there and you just got to burn gas. And like I said, I mean, it's, you know, one of the things people say, it's like, oh, well, you know, give me a spot. And the thing is that the reality is that some of the, you know, some of the spots that I really like to go visit, I don't see a lot of deer. You know what I mean? So they're like, oh, well, you know, they think that the spot is what makes the hunt. And the thing is that, you know, like if it's a new guy, I'll send him to another spot where he sees more animals and has more opportunities to be able to get on something, rather than see one buck. You might see one buck a day and then you're done. That's kind of rough to swallow, you know. I mean, I could tell them where to go, but they'd be like, oh man, you're crazy. There's no deer there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's just a question of,
do you find that certain areas tend, and I know bucks will scatter all over the place, and big bucks sometimes, you know, people talk about it, man, we found a giant buck half mile off the road, nobody ever looks there. But do you find in the areas that you're hunting that some of your more mature bucks have a, you know, if you kill a mature buck out of a canyon, another one just tends to move in there because it holds everything that they want? I mean, do you ever find that? Like, we used to say that all the time with like big whitetails. Man, you kill a big one here, and it's such a prime area that there's another big one just going to funnel in there because it's so prime.
Right. That does happen. You know what I mean? And that is going to happen. But it doesn't always mean that it's a deer that I want to go after, you know, because a nice buck could be, you know, a 95-inch buck, and that's a mature buck, you know. But it's not something that I really want to go after. So gotta go find something else. But you're right. I mean, it's like I said, that's why, you know, you gotta cover ground. You gotta be able, you know, especially like I try and have, you know, a few bucks that I want to try and go after, because it happens, man. You screw it up. You want to let that one rest a little bit. Well, that's not the time to be kind of messing around. So, hey, let's move on to the next one and kind of, you know, see what happens with that one. That type of scenario, you know what I mean? But for the most part, you know, it's just covering ground. You got to cover ground.
When are you doing all your scouting? Do you do some early season hunting? I mean, are you after, if you can find a 100-inch buck in velvet, are you going after him?
I actually, yeah, I mean, I'll go after him.
You typically don't have an opportunity to shoot a deer. You killed it in January, so your tag is, you got to wait till the following year, I suppose.
Well, you know, one of the 8 was a velvet buck, and he ended up scoring like 112.
Okay. Yeah.
So, you know, you get to see those too, you know. That year I ended up having an antelope tag, so I ended up getting an antelope, and then about a week later I kept on hunting and ended up getting that Coues deer, you know. So it's you know, it's the same format. You just got to cover ground. You got to get behind
Gunner,
the
shut
glass,
up.
and you kind of have to you know, be persistent, you know.
Well, what some people might not realize, and there is no Coues deer or mule deer in Arizona. They're you know, they're droughted out. So the advice I'm going to tell somebody, or the information I'm going to tell somebody, it's not going to do you any good if you're out of state and want to come down here and hunt anyway. I joke about that, but you know, we're fortunate in the amount that we can hunt. So you know, I can buy a tag January 1, and I get a over-the-counter deer tag in a lot of the units, not your Premier, not your Strip, not your Kaibab, but in a majority of the units in Arizona. You know, as difficult as the state as it is to draw tags, we have unbelievable hunting opportunities if you're an archery hunter. And
Right.
there's just no deer here for anybody that wants to come out of state. So just keep in your own state. So I'm just kidding. But I can buy a tag in January and I can hunt all of January. And typically I'm hunting the rut. I mean, I am hunting the rut, and that's mule deer and Coues deer. If I don't fill that, I can hunt the early season. End of August, mid-August, I get to hunt that early season. So I could be hunting deer in velvet. And if I don't fill then in a handful of the units, some of the other good units, I can hunt from about mid-December to the end of that year. So my tag, I buy my license and my tag for all year, and I can actually hunt 3 seasons. I mean, it's incredible. You just don't find that really any other places.
No, and like I said, that's one of the things that really makes Arizona have such great opportunities out here is, anybody can come out here at any time and, have a pretty good run at something that's pretty decent,
Yeah, them velvet ones, they just, the big old velvet mule deer though. That's why I'm waiting for that strip tag. But still a few years off. I was talking to Nick the other day, and he's like, just put in for the early kaibab, come gun hunting. And, I'm a bow hunter, Big Mo. That's really what I've done. When I grew up, and I want to ask you about this if you've ever seen a change, but I started hunting, obviously when I was 5 years old. I started going with my dad, and at 12 years old in Wisconsin, you can hunt. And so I started hunting, and back then, I was born in 75. So you look at 1987, 88, 89, 90, gun hunting deer in Wisconsin is like a national holiday. You take the week off school and everybody gun hunted. And at a point in Wisconsin, there'll be 600 to 700 people that enter the woods with rifles. Now, I have theories on why that many people, not even that many people, should be entering the woods with rifles, because they never touched their rifle until that year or that week, but growing up, you could hunt the neighbor's property. It's way different than it is here. So you have a 40-acre chunk here, a farmer owns that. And you probably know this in the Midwest. And then, this guy's got a big chunk. He's got 300 acres of land. It's all land tracts, private land tracts. Very, very limited public land, opposite of where we live here. So growing up, the gun hunting was like a holiday. We looked forward to it. It was amazing. Of course, I got into bow hunting very young. My first bow was a PSE as well, and it had negative let off. It was like, if I was pulling 40 pounds, I was holding about 70. It was so terrible. But about the mid-90s, so I graduated high school in 93, and I would say 93, 94, we started to see the quality deer management signs go up. And the commercialization of hunting started to get bigger. Hunting shows, there was a TV 13 Outdoors, then the Sportsman's Channel and all this stuff, and shed hunting became popular, and it got cool to shoot big animals and show them off. And all of a sudden, posted signs started to go up, where before, I would hunt my grandpa's brother's 300 acres, and we would hop this fence, and then that fence, and then that fence, and we'd be hunting 4 properties over, and you'd bump into the landowner, and you'd be high-fiving each other that you shot a little deer or squirrels or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, you get to a point where you touch a line fence in the mid-90s, and it was like all heck was breaking loose. Yeah, they wanted to fight you. It was nobody could hunt. Quality deer management. You're a bad person if you shoot a spike or whatever. If you shot a small buck. And so I just found it easier to bow hunt and stop gun hunting, because nobody was really bow hunting that seriously back then. It wasn't like it is today. So all the properties that would not let you gun hunt, I could turkey hunt and I could bow hunt. So I just found it easy to do that. So I've always identified more as a bow hunter, but I had no problem picking up a gun. So where I was going with that story was, Nick was telling me the other day, he's like, just put in, you got 10 points, put in for the early kaibab. And I usually go up there with him when he's guiding hunters and just kind of help out and learn. It's just free education for me to be split wood and help and do whatever I can do, be a set of eyes on the glass. And it's so much fun watching long range, shooting, behind the big binos and finding these big mule deer, and they're shooting great mule deer. And so I was so tempted. I'm like, I'm just going to do that. I'm just going to put in for the early kaibab because I can draw. I bought a custom rifle a couple years ago. I've never even shot anything with it. My son has, I haven't. And then I had Greg Krogh on. Yeah, I had Greg Krogh on last podcast, and he's like, well, I just got to be on. I told him, I said, I think I'm just going to do the early kaibab. I'm not holding out for the strip anymore. And he goes, well, I'm really going to get in your head. He goes, nah, I've been up to the strip. I think you got to hold out for the strip. So I'm so torn. I love these big velvet mule deer bucks and I want them so bad, but I'm so tired of waiting. And so we are so fortunate here. Have you seen that? Did you see that down here? I'm talking about Wisconsin. Did you see that here in the Southwest? That kind of that paradigm shift of the hunting, like it was open and everybody had fun. And then all of a sudden the competition of it. Have you seen that at all?
What I have seen, not really as far as kind of like landowners and stuff like that, but what I have seen is, these people that have picked up a bow and have no ethics whatsoever, that they, I mean, it's just something as simple as if you see somebody that's making a stock on an animal, you let them finish their stock, you kind of hold back, kind of get out of the area. Now it's just kind of like if they see that you're making a stock, they will drive as far as they can and jump out and run after the deer just to try and get in front of you. I mean, I've guided hunters during the gun hunt, and we were making a stock on a buck, nothing huge, just a nice, 90-inch deer that, good representative. Guys started launching from 1,100 yards out. Weren't even coming close, but they saw that we were ahead of them. And they're like, might as well just shoot. It's been real bad as far as that goes. But, I mean, as long as you stay in an area where there's not a lot of roads, people kind of don't always get to it, so. But there has been a big shift, and sometimes I really don't think it's for the better. So that's why, especially on social media, the way it's kind of going. If I can help somebody out, if I can kind of say, hey, maybe this is the way that it should be done, so that way, because I know that if I'm on a stock, I would like for them to give me a chance to make my play, so I try and afford the same opportunity to the next person. Don't get me wrong, I have messed up, a stock on an animal, but I didn't see the hunter. You know what I mean? But it wasn't one of those things where you see the guy going in and it's just a very sad situation, when it comes to that. But, that's why as a matter of fact, I guided a hunt for Dwayne Adams way back when. It was probably going on 15 years ago now. And the reason that I got a rifle, that I have clients shoot my rifle, is that we ended up, it was Dwayne's client that I guided, and we got within, 400 yards of a deer. It was a nice, really nice buck, 100+ inch deer. He was in the middle of a tumbleweed, and with those big eyes, he was about 650, 700 yards out. And I was looking in between the tumbleweed, and I saw like the little white line that goes, between the nose and in the face type of thing. I'm like, white? What's white in a tumbleweed? And I just kind of kept looking, and all of a sudden he moved his head. And I'm like, oh. And then I saw that it was a nice buck. I'm like, hey, we got one right here. Got within 400 yards, and I'm like, hey, how are you sighted in? Or it's like, well, I'm 2 inches high at 100, and I should be good. Famous last words, And he ended up shooting a couple feet low. Well, with that being said, I mean, it's nowadays with these guys using long range rifles and stuff like that, you have to play that game, because if not, you're going to get a lot of stuff shot out from under you, with the glass, with the rifles, with the capabilities. It's really difficult to try and compete with some of these guys, especially, they just take the shot, whether they hits or doesn't matter. Your hunt's over for that. That stock is over. So it's really one of those things where, you have to keep up with the times. You have to see what other people are, you have to be able to, to hang with them. If not, you're going to be kind of at the short end of the stick.
No, I agree, man. Equipment has changed, and man, it's incredible. It really is. So before we get into some shooting, I want to ask you a bunch of questions on long range shooting and stuff like that with archery. Do you have a favorite story of one of the bucks that you killed? Any favorite stories of any of the bucks that you killed that you share?
I think one of my favorite ones is with my the velvet buck. I had my daughter with me. It was one of those quick hunts that we were going to go do. I went to go pick her up from practice. It's like so I went and picked her up. I'm like, hey, you hungry? Yep. Oh, gotta stop at Wendy's. Okay. So got her some food and we took off. And I was driving to the spot where I glass, and right where we were getting there, I started seeing within range of the actual glassing spot where we were going to glass from, there was, a few bucks and stuff like that, and a couple of mule deer, a couple of whitetails. So I'm like, hey, and my daughter was there, and she's like, Dad, there's another one coming up. Looks like a big one. And, oh yeah, and right as she's saying it, I'm seeing the deer come up, and he starts kind of taking off a little bit. It's not a very long story. I ended up putting an arrow in him, at a good range. I really don't like to talk the actual yardage just because people get kind of upset over it. But it was a pretty decent shot, And it was one of those deals where he took off at a dead run. I mean, he was just his head low. He was, hauling butt as fast as he could. And I'm looking at him, and as soon as I put my binoculars up to try and keep an eye on him, he disappears. I'm like, what? I'm like, man, I know I hit him good. It's like, wow. So, it was during the summer, so you kind of have some mosquitoes. So my daughter and I kind of made a little track to try and find him right off the bat, but we couldn't quite find him. There wasn't a lot of blood just because of, in the area that it was at, it was just kind of dense where he ran into. So it was kind of difficult to sometimes see. But I ended up finding the deer, the second loop around. I kind of put her in the truck because it was getting kind of late. I didn't want the mosquitoes tearing her up. And to this day, she will not let me live it down that she's the one that saw that buck first.
That's awesome.
So I really enjoyed that buck. I mean, it was a big buck, but more than that, it was just an experience that I shared with my daughter, and now she's picked up the hunting bug, and she killed a deer last year with a rifle, and she's killed a couple of javelina, and I mean, it's, I told her, I said, hey, whatever you do, got to come hunt with Dad at least once a year, no matter what happens. You got to come back and got to hunt with me so we'll see how long that lasts, because 3 years ago she was half the size she is now. She just grew like a weed, and just trying to enjoy it as much as possible right now.
Yeah, I got kids, and I can totally relate to that. Growing up, like I said, it was so special the way I grew up because my dad got me in the outdoors, both my brother and I, and we spent every weekend in the outdoors during hunting season with my dad. He was our hero growing up, and he's still alive. Obviously, I just don't get to hunt with him because I'm in Arizona, and I just don't have that. We don't have that opportunity like we did in Wisconsin, because you could literally drive 15 minutes and you're in your hunting woods, and everybody did it. And I told my wife, I think I was telling my wife this, I'm like, man, I was telling Nick, actually, I said, I don't care if it's a high quality hunt or if it's a low quality hunt. I'm putting my boys in for it. And I know there's some units we can just draw, with no points as a resident, and they can hunt deer with a rifle down south. And I said, we're just going to create a camp and create that bond growing up, because it's something to look forward to. I was lucky enough to draw that Gould's turkey tag down between Tucson.
Yeah, that was a great.
Yeah, and they came with me, and they were in the blind with me, and course, I'm into archery. So my oldest boy had a bow already. My youngest didn't, because he outgrew the little one he had. And so they got to watch me shoot it. And Nick and his boys came down and camped with us after I shot it. And we spent a couple days at the campground. His boys were shooting these little bows. And so my boys were shooting them. We got home and I was just getting ready to set my new one up. And I hadn't had time to set it up to hunt with this. So I was hunting with my last year's bow. And my oldest boy, he's 15. He said, "What are you going to do with that bow? Like your realm?" And I'm like, "I don't know, sell it or something." He's like, "Well, I'll take it." And I'm like, "If you'll shoot it." He's been shooting a lot. We went camping last weekend, scouting for his cow elk tag, and we brought their bows and he shot that. And so he's got he had a Hoyt that he passed down to his younger brother. And so they've been shooting. So just that getting them out, there's nothing like it, getting out in the outdoors, unplug and just have fun and let them be boys or young girls and do that stuff. So I can see how that's a cherished memory for sure.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. It's like I try and include her as much as possible, because if you don't do it right now, later on, definitely, it seems like, especially with a girl, it kind of seems like they'll have other interests and want to do other things. And, I just really want to instill that in her. I never really push it on her. If she wants to do it, we'll go do it, but luckily she's always, I've got pictures of her where my dad killed a deer with a muzzle loader, and she can't even walk. And she has the biggest grin because she's grabbing the deer and stuff like that. It's like, how can you beat that,
Well, and like you said, they're growing so fast, man. Sooner or later, they're not in our house anymore, and then we'll do anything to have that time back with them. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Well, enjoy all those moments. So from a shooting standpoint, here's what impresses me the most. Is I know you're a great shot because, when you're dialing new bows in, you'll post some of the pictures and the distances that you're shooting on targets. But as you know, and other archers know, there is a complete difference between being able to shoot a target and then consistently do that on live animals. Because it's just not the same. Standing there, everything's in my favor, no stress, and I'm dialed in. I just have a t-shirt on, and shooting. So not only are you dialed in on long range shooting, which I think being the best long range shooter makes you an incredible close range killer.
Right.
You're so dialed in there. But again, just to talk about 8 years in a row, the distances you're able to shoot these deer at. And of course, I get the whole distance thing. People don't understand it. We're in the West. You tell somebody you shoot a buck at 80 yards and you tell that to the Midwest, they'll almost freak out. Like, you can't shoot 80 yards. Well, sometimes that's as close as you're going to get out here. It just may be it, but you've been dialed in, not just on targets, and you're super dialed in there, but you're dialed in on game. And that's just a whole nother game, a whole nother world. So you mind just going back and telling me where that came in? Are you a perfectionist? Are you just, how your long range shooting, where, talk about that a little bit.
Well, when I first started hunting with a bow, it's like you said, it just kind of seemed like the animals, they always knew what my max distance was, and they're always like 10 yards outside of that. So it's one of those things where, you kind of see what you need to do in order to be successful. And you're like, well, what do I have to do to get there? And, one of the things that I've noticed is that, you have these people that are target archers, and they can hit small dots at a pretty long ways off. So I've implemented, some of their tuning practices, some of their gear, some of their ideas, and kind of used it towards the way that I hunt. A lot of times people will say, hey, I want my bow as light as possible because I want to carry, that way I can carry it around all day. Well, my idea is that if your bow does its job, you might not have to walk around that much with it, So it's one of those things where, for me, the number one reason that I have the bow is for it to shoot. So I make it to where it shoots the best. Where if it's heavy, well, trust me, I got a few pounds that I can lose that will make up the difference, There's just certain things that you can't compromise, for example, not that I want to go back to the optics, but, you know, as an example is that I was hunting blacktails, you know, and it was a backpack hunt. And so I took the big eyes apart and I said, okay, we'll have, you know, the 10s and I'll have the spotting scope. Man, I just could not glass anything up. I was so used to having the big eyes that, you know what? I don't care if I got to carry an extra 3 pounds because I got to carry the whole thing. I'm going to carry it the next time. And when I went up to Colorado, that's what I did. It's like I was up at 12, 13,000 feet, but in my backpack were my big eyes, you know, because they're there to do a job. And, you know, if you become less effective because you don't want to carry an extra 3 pounds, for me, that's like, well, that means that you're not going to carry those 3 pounds for a lot longer than if you did carry those 3 pounds, that it would create opportunities for you. You know what I mean? So that's kind of one of the reasons that I implement, you know, certain things about target archery, because it makes me hold the best. It makes me shoot the best. You know, we were talking about arrows and stuff like that. I mean, I shoot what I want to shoot because I think those are the best. Because there's also that placebo effect. But when you see it when you do your testing and you see that there was, I was shooting, just for an example, I was shooting Brand X. People think that all arrows are created equal, that, you know, if it's carbon, it's either straight or it's broke. That isn't the case. I found that out the hard way. You know, it's like I had my arrows numbered, and depending on which way I shot, whether it was ascending or descending, the group size would either expand or shrink. And I'm like, well, how is that? And I was aiming at the exact same spot, you know what I mean? So what would happen was, but I was like, I'd shoot an arrow and then I'd shoot at that arrow and I'd shoot, you know, just keep on grouping. So there was one arrow that was kind of out of whack. That was the one that I would shoot first, and then the other ones would follow suit. But if that one was one of the last ones that I shot, then all of a sudden the group size expanded. So that kind of got me to thinking, and I spun the arrows, and one of them just kind of flew off the arrow spinner. I'm like, man, this can't be good. And that's when I started looking for it. You know, that's when I started saying, hey, well, you know what? Arrows do make a difference, you know? And I wasn't shooting that far. So it's been a lot of trial and error. It's been a lot of long day shooting, you know, see what works, see what doesn't work. I know that, you know, my wife used to get on me because I'd spend days just shooting arrows, and just seeing what exactly will work and what won't work, you know, and been doing this for probably going on 20 years already. And it just, there's certain things that you look for and certain things that you know, for example, we'll talk a little bit about arrows. For me, you know, not only do you have to have the best, but there's also a process in building them. You know, I mean, Tim Gillingham, he's got a whole series on, you know, how to set up arrows, how to set up bows and stuff like that. But, you know, I take the straightest part of the arrow, I spin all of them, I see what the straightest part is, so my labels don't match up, you know. And, you know, a lot of people say that, you know, it's like, oh, well, you know, take it to your pro shop. There's nothing against pro shops. I think, you know, there's some really great pro shops, but at the end of the day, they can only do so much for you. You know what I mean? Because that's such a personal thing, that bow, the way it fits you, the way, there's just certain things that you're going to like, the way it feels. And it's really difficult for them. And it's for them to be able to say there's certain guidelines that they can follow, and it's going to get you in the ballpark, and it's going to, you know, you'll be good. But, you know, if you really want to stretch the distance, there's a lot that goes into the way it feels, the way it holds. I mean, something as simple as, like, for example, how I set up my target to shoot at long range. You know, lately I'll have a strip of 2-inch black tape go across, and then I have 2 inches without the tape, and then another 2 inches below that. And what that does for me is that at long range, when you're looking at the target, it just looks like one big black line, and it fits my pin very well. But once I see that it hits inside the 2 inches that doesn't have the strip, I know that I'm dialed in. You know what I mean? If I have to shoot closer, I can just pick either one or the other. So it's just as much about tuning your mind as it is tuning the bow, as it is having good arrows, as it is. There's a lot of things that need to mesh for it to be for it to perform at peak, you know. And as you found out, you know, I mean, the mind, you know, got certain things like target panic and eyesight, and you know, all kinds of things that can play a factor in how effective you are. So it's just a constant. I'm just constantly trying to improve. You know, I see wherever my shortcomings are, and I try and improve on them. That's the only way to, you know, just try and be better than I was before, and try not to forget what I've learned, and you know, kind of stick to the basics and try not to get too wrapped up in. There was a time, a while back, that like I thought, man, you know what? I know what I'm doing. And as soon as I thought that, you know, reality comes in and slaps you upside the face, and it's like, well, you know what? I got to get back to the basics and go back to my fundamentals, and that's what's important, you know. So it's like I said, I mean, I just try not to take things for granted, and try and have the best equipment that I can, have it tuned to the best of my ability, and try and have it honed. So at that moment of truth, you know, you're not worried about whether it's going to be, you know, you're not saying to yourself, man, I hope it hits. You're more along the lines of like, oh man, you're screwed.
Yeah,
You
you
know?
want that confidence that you release the arrow and you know that's a dead animal. But you said so many good things there. The weight factor, and before I get there, I think just becoming a student of what you want to do. You know, like you said, you can go to a pro shop and it's great. I took my bow to a pro shop one time, and I usually buy my bows from a friend of mine back in Wisconsin. He's somebody I really trust, and I got trust in him. You know, and it's a shop I used to work at, so of course I want to support that. And I want to, if I'm buying other things, I buy it from my local pro shop here.
Right.
But you know, because I want to support them all, I want to support my pro shops. But he sent it out, and of course it was paper tuned, but I have to paper tune it myself. I can't rely it on, you know. And I took it to a pro shop, and the guy just grabbed. I said, "Hey, I want to paper tune this." He grabs it, shoots it, gives it back, goes, "Perfect bullet hole." I'm like, "Yeah, but so I said, I'm not even gonna argue. I went and I bought all the PVC and some paper tuning paper, and I built my own paper tuner.
Yes.
And so just becoming a student of, there's so many YouTube channels, like you said, Tim Gillingham, Building Arrows. Just watched a really good one with, I forget his, I'll draw a blank as a world champion shooter. He was talking about balance and weight, and so much good stuff out there that, that you can just become a student of understanding. You don't need to know all the metrics and all that kind of stuff, but you start to learn how to spin an arrow, take the wobble out of that arrow, yet still be able to use the arrow. So you're saying like your labels don't match up, but weight is a good one. I'm going to show you what I got here. So I just put this together last night, and I just got everything in, and you know, I'm throwing this back bar off it. Okay. And this thing's a tank. It weighs a lot. And that was the first thing in my mind. And it's always been in my mind. Miguel, is I'm like, man, this thing's going to be so heavy. But if it's heavy when I'm shooting it and it's balanced front and back, side to side, and that thing is, what I learned was if I'm too heavy in the front, I'd go through my natural, you know, my pin was just a natural progression. One of the things I learned was I'm never going to hold my pin like dead stop. You know, I heard a guy, one of the champion shooters said, your pin is going to float, and it's okay as you go through your squeeze off that it floats through there. And I'm like, that was a huge tip for me to learn that. But I started to find myself, it would float a little bit. And then as I'm going through my float, if I wasn't quite squeezed off, it would drop. And what I realized was I got too much weight on the front. It's not balanced in the back. And it was a tip I saw in a video. So I put this back bar on there. I haven't shot this yet. This whole weekend I'm gonna sight it in. for all my pins, but it's heavy. But I thought to myself that just what you said, it is heavy, but if I'm too weak to carry it, then I need to work on my fitness. I'll strap it to my backpack and get to where I'm going to glass. But the last thing I want is to pull my bow up when I'm not dialed in on my mind because my adrenaline's high and I'm not going, it's just now on muscle memory and I've lost all my fine motor skills. That thing's got to be there. It's got to stay there.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is that when you have everything dialed in, you should just be concentrating on where you want to hit. That's something else that a lot of people they kind of focus on, like they're still looking at the antlers. Once you decide that that's the animal you want to take, now you got to get that out of your head and start concentrating on what you need to do next. You need to go through your shot process. You need to just think about, okay, talk to yourself. You got to aim, and let that be a surprise release. It's one of those things where, you really have to be able to say, put all the BS aside. Now you got to get at the task at hand, which is getting the arrow into the air, into the animal. And that's one of the things that I've really had to work on, because it's tough, man. You get all jacked up. It's like, it still happens to me, the adrenaline starts rushing and, it's like, man, I got to shoot now because the animal's going to take off. And, you start thinking all kinds of stuff. Well, one thing that I learned was that the more like sometimes people want to get in really close. And I'm not a big fan of that. It just seems like things get really complicated. Things get in your head that, oh, you're so close. You're going to bump the animal. It's going to be all bad. So you rush the shot. Some of the worst shots that I've made on animals have been really, really close shots. And so that's why if you take if you can kind of get at the max end of your shooting maximum effective range, and it really is imperative to say, you have to be honest with yourself of what your maximum range is. You know what I mean? It can't be like, oh, well, I hit something at this distance one day and okay, I'm set. No, you have to have that confidence that when you're going to let that arrow go, you're going to know that you're going to hit. The best shots that I've made, it's like, I know, like when I shot that mule deer, that 180-inch mule deer, the only thought in my head was like, man, you are screwed. He was there raking, a tree. Like, man, you are screwed. And that's a PG version of what I said, but boom, drilled him. And a lot of times it's like you just have that confidence because you've done it so many times that's why, we go through this whole process of getting, the equipment together, it's, for me, it's been, I switched over to Matthews and, they make some great hunting bows. I didn't get a hunting bow. I got a target bow, TRX 36. It's, I was able to, when I got it, the string angle was awesome. The way it fit me was awesome. It was a way that, the older bows used to fit, this craze about going short. I understand why they're doing that. And bows shoot phenomenal, but just the geometry for me, it just fits me better. I've just, I'm old school, man. It's like, it was like just putting on a, freaking glove that was just perfect. So, let me just switch over and I'll show you what I got.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see here. Can you see that? TRX 36.
Yep, I can see it.
Let's see here.
So you run a pretty good back bar.
Yeah, and I got about 12 ounces on the back.
Wow.
And then I have about 6 ounces on the front. And that's just kind of what, I used to run a little bit more on when I was shooting Hoyt. It's just been a pretty good setup so far. It's shoot a spot hog sight that.
Are you a single pin guy? Single pin spot hogger?
I'm a single pin.
You're a single pin guy. Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, it just kind of been one of those things where it just seems like it's been a lot better as far as target acquisition,
Yeah.
accuracy goes. For me, it's just helped me out. For me, it's just all about accuracy. Being able, if I can't get the shot off, then it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, with that
So
single pin, with your shooting ability, so I have the option sight, and it's got the flip open.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about. It's got all your fixed pins, and I've always shot 7 pins, and there's a challenge in there. Pin confusion and counting pins, and again, I'm colorblind, so I have to specifically order the pin with all yellow pins, or the sight with all yellow pins, every sight I have. And so I paint my 50-yard pin with white on it, just the bracket. And so there's the yellow dot and then the bracket. So I can always acquire my target. If it's 60 yards, I just go to my 50, then one down. I mean, I've been doing it for years, so I understand it. But on the site, you can also flip it open, and I have a single pin slider. And I'll tell you that I have really fallen in love with a single pin slider. To get all those other pins out of the way, something up here between my ears, the clearing all that out is cleared out the confusion, even though I know the pin I'm supposed to be on. And I think when you can shoot a little bit further, and I don't have to get into 40 yards, if I can shoot that animal at 65 yards and I'm just outside, I can stay out of that alert zone of that animal a little bit. Here's what my friend said to me. He goes, he went from a multiple pin to a 2 pin. I think he had a black gold, and it's got 2 pins, and he can adjust it to whatever he wants. He said, JP, if I have to rush the shot, I shouldn't take the shot. And if I practice good enough and my stalking is good enough, I should have time to range the animal and shoot the animal and dial it. He goes, it's the challenge when people say multiple pins you need is because people are bumping animals, and then they got to rush a shot, and you don't have time to range it and all that. So I get it. So I've really started to love the single pin, and I've been against a single pin forever because I just started hunting with multiple pins, and I'm always like, man, multiple pins is the only way to go when you're hunting, because you jump him at 30 and he goes out to 50. I can't hold on range and then adjust. But you're like, when you say, if I can keep my range out a little bit further, and I'm not advocating just shooting out beyond my range, but knowing what my range is and moving into that area, and I can shoot 100% effectively at that range, I'm out of their, alert zone a little bit more, and I'm not worried about spooking an animal. I got time to range it, slide it, kill it.
That's been what I found. And most of the times people run a 5 pin. So, you're running at 60 yards, right? 20 through 60 usually. And most of my shots, have been past the 60-yard mark anyway. So I'd still have to dial anyways. So, I mean, it's one of those things where I get rid of the clutter. And, there's also, like, if you're just running a single pin, there's if you Google trick pin, it's on Rock Slide. It was an article, and it talks to you about being able to use, aiming 12 inches low and being able to hit, a pretty good chunk of distance, like if you're hunting elk or something like that. So there's ways to manipulate the sight. So if you are in close, you can you don't have to be dialing per se at close range. For elk, you aim at the brisket and boom, you shoot. There is some setup. There is some limiting factors as far as that system goes, but it's a way to be able to, if you got to get a shot off quick, like if you're hunting elk or whatever, sometimes you're in the pines, or, it's 20, 30-yard shot, it's like you just aim at a certain spot, and then boom, it's off. So there's ways to get around it also. It's not just something where you have to dial every single yard that you shoot.
Right. And at the end of the day, it's all about spending time with your equipment, shooting, knowing where everything's hitting. So what's your practice session look like? I always took, and this could be completely wrong, so give me your advice on this, but I was just always doing a step back approach when I'm getting, like, I'm not shooting long range at the moment. My yard changed. I was able to shoot out to 90 yards in my yard all the time. Now I'm down to 25 yards because we moved to a different place. So I'll be doing weekends at a long distance range. So I'll shoot leading up to all our hunts. I'll shoot long range all the time, but I would always do a step back approach. I would I mean, let's just use a number of 50 yards. Let's say 50 yards was my max. I would just shoot 50 till I could really just keep, it felt like the longer I shot it, the more I would tighten it. So when I was at tight enough where I felt good, then I would just step back and I would shoot 40, 50, and then 60. And 60 might be big, you know, softball size, until I could just pack it down. Then I would step back. Not all in one day. I mean, that took, you know, that was over time. But what do you do to get to shoot the way that you do? Do you have any kind of system or anything, or is just drop back and let them fly?
I think when like you really have to break down your shot. You know what I mean? It's not just a question of going out there and flinging arrows. You have to go out there with a purpose. You know what I mean? If you're gonna, you know, for example, if you're tuning, that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna tune. But it's a certain aspect of the tuning type of thing. I don't try and tune my bow. You know, it's kind of like an average of days type of thing. You know what I mean? It's not something where if one day I'm good, okay, it's good. I check it over multiple days. Just like when I sight in over multiple days. I make sure that everything is good, because not every day is a good day shooting. You know what I mean? There's some days that, man, it's just time to put the bow away and come back another day. And there's other days like, man, you just can't miss. So you kind of have to get an average. So that way, no matter what happens, it's consistent type of thing, you know. But for me, like if I'm shooting, like for example, let's say I'm done tuning my bow. Like right now, I'm basically sighting in, and because I have a single pin, I usually do a sight tape type of thing, and I'll shoot 30, 60, 90, and 120, just so I can get everything dialed in. So, you know, the last week I kind of shot 3 days where I was kind of getting everything dialed in. And then, you know, that last day, it seemed like everything was good. So I didn't shoot the whole week. And I went back out this morning, and I stepped at 120 yards. I let an arrow fly. And I checked my distances from far to near. I don't do near to far. And the reason is that for me, you know, you hit it fresh. You know, you don't want to shoot those longer distances when you're tired. So you kind of, I like to shoot the further distances first. Obviously, when you're first sighting in, you're going to do close to far because you don't want to be missing, you know, ruining arrows. But once, you know, you kind of have an idea of where everything is at, you know, I usually start from far and then work my way in, because the closer distances aren't as critical as the further ones, you know what I mean? And I try and slide in one axis, you know, the vertical first, and, you know, the up and the down, try and get that, you know, dialed in. And then I'll flip the target around and I'll check my left and right at, you know, let's say at 90 yards. So that way I know that they're hitting just right. But once all that is said and done, once you know that that your marks are good and golden, and, you know, I just try and stick to the further distances, you know, because that's what really, really perfects your form. And then I try and move to 3D targets. And a lot of times, you know, it's like you have to, you know, because all of a sudden now you're hitting high. You're dead nuts when you were shooting at, you know, when I was shooting at the tape and everything else. But you start shooting an animal, all of a sudden now you're shooting high. Well, why is that? You know, how am I looking at the animal? It's like, it's all about dialing in how you see things. So it's a constant work in progress, you know. I mean, it's, to be honest with you, I don't even put a sight tape on the bow till probably 5 days before I hunt. Sometimes there's been times where I put it in the day before I hunt, you know, but everything is dialed in. And because I have a, you know, the Hogfather, it actually has clicks. So
I
you know,
lost
once
you.
I put the
Oh, there you go.
clicks, boom, now it's dialed in perfect.
Wow.
So
Man, I hope people are gathering all this info, because I'm eating this up. I mean, I do so much of what you're talking about. I don't do the tape space tape. I've always done the tape though. but I'm going to add that in now because that for my vision, my left eye, I shoot both eyes open, and my vision, my left eye is really, really bad. I got a condition in my eyes, and my right eye is good, which is my shooting eye, but my left eye is bad. But if I close an eye, it tenses my body a little bit. It may sound weird, but it's muscle tension I don't need. So I always keep it open, but it makes a little bit of blurriness. And so the way I see that target's a little bit blurry. So I think that tape is going to make a difference, especially at that longer distance, because I get past 50, 60, and that's where that blur really starts to affect me. There was something else you said in there too, but I'm so glad you said this, Big Mo, that some days you have bad days, because in the world of social media, you would think nobody ever has a bad day when it comes to shooting. And some days, and I don't want a newer shooter to be tricked, and maybe not just a newer shooter either, but somebody who has been around a little while and maybe doesn't have somebody that they can go to and ask questions to, and they're just trying to figure it on their own, and they go out and have a bad day and they think, oh, I'm just never going to be that good. Because I battled with that before. Like, I shoot all the time. We moved into a new house, so now that this bow is here, I'll shoot every single day. But at our last house up until 3 weeks ago, I shoot every single day. Unless I'm traveling, I shoot every single day of the year. Some days I go out and I'm awful. Now, I'm not awful like I'm missing the target, but I'm like, gosh, I've been shooting since I've been 12 years old. I should never miss. But there's days I'm not good. So I'm glad you say that, because you're an exceptional shot, and to admit that, brings it down to anybody can understand that. Some days you're on, some days you're just not on.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like I said, I mean, it's one of those things where it's just a constant work in progress. You know what I mean? The whole thing is that for me, usually the first shot is what matters. So that's why I really there's days that I just go out there and I just shoot one arrow. I get out back to my furthest distance and I launch an arrow at a 3D target and see where it hits. And if it doesn't hit good, it eats at me for the rest of the day, because I'm not going to shoot that bow again until the next day. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's a way to kind of put a little bit of extra pressure on yourself and kind of let you see what actually is going to happen come, when an animal steps out in front. So it's breaking down the different things into steps, so that way you can work on each individual thing, so that whatever you think is a weakness, now at least it's not a weakness anymore, type of thing,
Yeah.
But you have to be very self-critical. I am, like I said, most of the times I don't remember my triumphs. I remember more of my misses, more of my failed stocks, more of, the things that I screwed up, and there's times where it's like, man, I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have done that, and I did it anyways. It's like, just want to hit yourself upside the head, type of thing.
That's why you're good. That's why you're good at it, though, because you're so self-critical.
Well, it's just a lot of fun, and it's one of those things where, it's like every year people are like, well, oh, you're gonna kill another big buck. It's like, man, I wish I had your confidence, because it's every year it's like, am I gonna be able to pull it off again? Am I gonna see a good deer? It's like, what happens if you just don't see anything? It's rough sometimes. So I try and keep everything to where if I have at least one opportunity, I have a good chance of making good on it. And that's, for me, is why I work so much at it, type of thing,
Oh yeah, it just jogged my memory. I wrote it down. Spot shooting versus 3D. I got fooled, so I'm glad you said that as well. That you shoot spots, you dial it in, get everything. I don't ever really put. What I've learned with sight tape, and I'm kind of off on a tangent here. The site will send you some sight tape, and I just haven't. The one I got, they sent me the sight tape, and I've had 2 of these sites now, and I couldn't get any of the sight tape to match up. It is what it is. I think they're close, but it wasn't good enough for me. I don't want the top of my slider pin to be at the bottom of the 30-yard mark. I want it dead center, because that's how critical I am about it. And so I do the exact same thing that you do. I just have, like, I'll rip this sight tape off because I'll start shooting. I'm gonna shoot tonight a little bit, just out in my yard a little bit, just for balance. But I'll put a blank piece of tape on it, and I'll put a 1-inch piece of electrical tape. That's what I start at when I'm close, till I'm drilling that thing every single time at 20, up and down. And then I make that mark, but I never make a mark until 10 out of 10, I'm hitting it at 20 yards on the 1-inch tape. And then I'll do it at 30 yards. Then I'll make a mark. And I do that. And I don't ever try to find a sight tape until I've shot that way for about a month. And I know it just wasn't a good day, or I was maybe not anchored in the exact right spot or whatever, until I'm really used to the bow. And then I have bought, you'll find this funny. So I have an option sight. I'm not sponsored by anybody. And so I don't have to worry about any products I talk about, anything like that. That's the way I love it. I just love archery and I love products. So I buy the option sight because I like that technology. But I bought Spot Hog. I went to Amazon. I bought Spot Hog sight tape. And for $12, they sent me all their sight tape. And I was taking my marks and I'm looking at all the options, couldn't get any of them. Went through all the Spot Hog, and finally I found one that matched up to a T. I even had a bow shop that made me some custom, and it still didn't match up. I still couldn't get them to match up. So I found my own. But what happened to me was I was shooting at 3D targets all the time. I have a big Glendale full rut. Well, it's a huge target. So the kill zone, 12 by 12 on this big insert. Well, you can fool yourself to think, hey, man, I'm just drilling this thing. I'm always in the kill zone. And maybe at 60, 70, 80 yards, my arrows are spread out a little bit, but I'm killing it every time. And so I was doing that, and I didn't want to shoot, I thought my bow was sighted in, so I'm just whacking this target over and over, and I'm drilling it at 80, and my bow tops out at 86 based on my sight. So I'm killing it every single time. I'm super excited. And all of a sudden I'm getting ready to go hunting, and I pulled my target out of the way because it was going to rain. I had my big block target, my 4x4 block, and I had that little piece of tape, and I was high every single time on that tape. And I'm like, that's just not right. And I got my sight tape on now. What I fooled myself to think was just because I was killing that deer and I was in the kill zone, I wasn't shooting at a spot on that kill zone. My vision didn't allow me at that distance to find a little spot. But now that I'm honed back in on that little piece of tape, I realized I was high. So I had to go back to the drawing board. So I think it's great what you said, start there, go to 3Ds, you can come back there and fine tune it again. It's a never ending process of having fun.
Well, once I'm dialed in, once I know that everything is drilling perfect, that's when I start shooting at some form of a 3D, whether it be, they got those solo skin targets, something like that. It's basically like those things are awesome. Just, you're able to shoot at something that's as lifelike as possible. But the thing is that sometimes the way you hold on a target, whether it's a tape, whether it's a bullseye, it doesn't mean that it's going to be, now you have to adjust the way you hold on the animal. And that's what's important. You're not, at that point, I'm not looking to sight in my bow. I'm looking to see how I need to hold in order to hit where I want to hit, type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I've learned that kind of helps me out as far as shooting at game. I used to shoot a lot of 3Ds, and the way that they're set up, it's not always the best. If you look at a 3D target with the scoring rings, a 12 is the center of the middle section, and that's a little bit high when you're shooting at animals. You know what I mean? You gotta, I want to shoot at the bottom third. So at one point I decided, well, am I going to be a 3D shooter? Am I going to be a hunter? And I stopped shooting those 3Ds. And the only 3D targets that I would shoot at would have actual kill zones, not, scoring rings type of thing, So it's just about, you have to make a decision of what you're going to be, what you're going to do. If you think you want to follow and shoot 3D courses and that's what you like to do, then hey, okay, have at it. But you gotta keep in mind that when you do go hunt, it's not always the best practice. Like I said, some of those groups that I shoot, for me, it doesn't matter what I do throughout the practice session. For me, it's the first group that I shoot. That's the one that matters, because that's the one that I shoot cold. That's the one that's got to be reality. Once you're warmed up, well, yeah, you're going to shoot good because, you're already all loosened up and everything is good. But, you know, like I hadn't shot my bow from last week. I didn't go till this morning. And okay, I'm still sighted in. So that tells me that I got my bow set up correctly, that you know, that builds confidence in me that's saying that, hey, even if I put my bow down for a week, it's still going to be where I need it to be, you know. And there's so many things that you got to look at also. I mean, for example, you know, it's like I took off the grip. You know, the way you connect to the bow, the way you know, you grab that bow, you know, the way you hold the bow is critical. So it's like, you know, you got to have something that's repeatable. You got to have something that's forgiving. You know, I mean, if you look at bows in general, you grab any bow, doesn't matter how it's tuned. If you put it in a shooting machine and you grab one arrow, it will put the same arrow in the same hole at 20 yards. Doesn't matter how it's set up. But the fact of the matter is that there's ways to make it. When you tune a bow, you're actually gaining forgiveness, not accuracy. You know, that's one of the things that, you know, I tell a lot of people. It's like bows are accurate. You know, it doesn't matter how they're set up, they're accurate. But you have to make them forgiving, and the tuning process is to make the bow so that it's forgiving for you. You know, because not everybody shoots the same. You know, I mean, it's very difficult to tune a bow for somebody. I mean, whenever I tune bows for people, you know, the very last step is they come in and they shoot the bow, because it doesn't matter what I do with it, it's what they do with it, you know. So that's something that's very critical.
It's funny you say that, because, you know, I posted on social media this bow that I got. People ask us, so how's it shooting? I'm like, well, bow's going to shoot amazing. That's not a problem. They're built to shoot. It's me that you should be asking, how am I going to shoot it? You know, how am I going to shoot that bow? But I got two more questions for you. And then all this talk has got me whining. I'm looking at it and I'm like, I got to get out and shoot. I got to shoot this bow. So what's your shot process as you're getting ready for an animal? Everybody's got their own shot process. Like, you know, I draw, anchor, level, bubble, and then folk. Everybody's got their own shot process. So what do you go through when you're getting ready to shoot?
It's a pretty generic process. You know, I mean, you know, it's like the main thing that I really look at is make sure that my peep sight and my housing are lined up. But, you know, I do anchor, I do, the whole thing is that, you know, because the way they set up the bow, there's not a lot of intricacies as far as the shot process goes. But one of the things that I really do look at is the way the bubble housing, the bubble, that it's level, and that the peep lines up with the housing. And, you know, I just try and tell myself, hey, just aim. That's the biggest thing. It's just trying to get that surprise shot, you know. So I've had my bouts with the T word, you know.
T word. That's where that T swear word.
But, you know, I mean, you work through it, you know, you keep, you know, like you, I shoot a hinge and stuff like that. And I still use an index finger when I hunt, but most of the time I found a hinge that works with my index finger that hits the same spot, so I can switch either or and not have too much of an issue. But it really is, the shot process is just about getting that surprise release, you know, and making sure that you shoot the bow the same way. Some people, it might be a little bit different, but everything kind of comes to the head with this kind of the same mentality, you know. You've got to line things up.
And I say this all the time, and I see people that just pick their bow up, and obviously someone who's just really geared into bow hunting shoots all the time, but people will ask all the time, like, why do you shoot all the time? I mean, I just pick my bow up. I don't have to shoot. I pick my bow up and boom, I draw back, I hit 40 yards. I'm like, there's a difference when you just pick your bow up. I mean, at any given time, I can pick my bow up. I don't have to shoot it all year. I can go pick it up, drill a target. I mean, they're almost like shooting rifles. You know, they're very accurate with all the anchor points and peep sights and everything. But the reason is because when you draw back on an animal, case in point, my last animal I just shot was a turkey. I didn't even get that excited over. I mean, I was excited. Of course, my adrenaline always gets going, but I shot and I didn't hit exactly where I wanted, killed the turkey. But you know what I thought in my mind? Did I level my bubble? Did I settle in where I'm supposed to settle in? It's muscle memory. When you shoot over and over and over and over, and then you have a bull elk at 30 yards screaming at you and your hair's back, and it's the first bull you've ever shot at. If this is the first couple times you've been picking your bow up and only shot, 40 shots before you do it, your muscle memory is not there to do exactly what you're doing every single time. And here's a story that I always back it up with. So if you're an archery shooter, shoot all the time, please. But I was telling somebody that story, and they were telling me a story of a police officer. Now, you're in the military, so you shot a lot, and you shoot guns a lot, and you're obviously an incredible archery shot. He said what they trained, the way that they used to train was they would train, and when they would empty a mag, they'd pull the mag out, and it would go in the belt. Not back into the mag pouch, but it would go into the belt, and they would load another mag back up on their pistol. And the police officer was in a shooting. And so they started talking to him, and they said, well, Mr. Officer, whatever, you fired off, the whole magazine. And he's like, I don't even remember shooting. But what he remembered was after it was all over and he got done, guess what he had? He had an empty magazine in his belt pouch, stuck down on his belt. His muscle memory was boom, 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 empty the mag, put another one in, empty the mag, but keep it on yourself, put another one in. Never remembered it. And it's case in point of muscle memory. When we're drawn back to shoot an animal and it's high anxiety, you lose all your fine motor skills, you're naturally going to do what you always do. You'll fall right back in the same spot. You'll check your bubble, and then you'll find whatever your shot process is. But if you don't do it all the time, it's just never going to happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So do you, you had messaged me. I put something on Instagram. This is the last thing, and I'll let you get on with your day. Big Mo, you've been awesome. I put something on Instagram one time about some exercises I was doing. I was just holding, some kettlebells out, and I was holding like just isometric holds, just holds. And what I was trying to do is trying to figure out a way to make myself more steady. Have you ever found a way to, other than balancing your bow, any fitness, anything that you do that allows your natural float of your pin to decrease and be a smaller float? Have you ever found anything to do?
As far as like, for me, what it's all about the way you set up the bow, honestly. It's like when I told you, it's like, it's all about, your holding weight, the way the bow is balanced, and, your draw length. So that's what's going to get you the most, the least pin float and stuff like that. I used to do a lot of weightlifting. I kind of stayed away from it now. My joints kind of hurt, I used to do a lot of benching, do a lot of, stuff like that. But man, hitting that 40-year mark, man, stuff hurts, But, it was to the point where, I was benching 315 pounds for 23, 24 reps. Just pretty good weight. Anymore, it's like, man, it's just about getting some cardio in, getting some reps in as far as, shooting the bow. I think, I've been developing a little bit of arthritis in my elbows too. So there's a lot of pain there and stuff like that. But for me, it still boils down to the balance of the bow, the holding weight of the bow, and the draw length. The draw length has to be correct. That's really what's going to help you out the most. Obviously, anything that you do as far as fitness goes will help, especially the more shots you shoot. But for me personally, it's I've just been that's what I kind of focus on to kind of get me to hold the best.
Well, you start pushing that kind of weight, 315 up in them 20 reps, of course you're going to get some tendonitis and arthritis. That's just bound to happen. Elbows, shoulders, hips, those are all going to wear out fast. And I love fitness. Obviously, it's something I'm as passionate at fitness as I am archery. I just have been my whole life. But things wear out. And so you got to find, today, I'll be honest, I do CrossFit, and I really, really enjoy that high intensity type stuff, but I've learned my body. I've learned my body and what I can do, what I can't do. And, the gym has been shut down for the 2 months, whatever it's been. So we also have a home gym. And of course I train hard, but I don't train as hard in my home gym as I do when I'm around other people that can see me. So
Right.
Monday we had a really hard workout. And then yesterday was another one. And I woke up this morning, I'll be honest, I very rarely ever skip the gym. I mean, very rarely. And this morning I woke up and I'm like, I'm going for a walk. I'm 45 now. And I got home. I'm like, gosh, something's really changed. I'm like, I am not recovering. Those 2 days, they beat me up. And so it's learning my body and doing all that. But I just, I was curious if you had anything. I love what you keep saying, going back to the balance of the bow. It comes back to the bow and setting it up right, balancing it right, shooting a lot, getting better, being a student of the game. And we owe it to the animal. I mean, obviously we're trying to take a life, and
I
there's
tell you
nothing
what,
worse. Go ahead.
when it comes down to it, like last year I went up and I hunted Colorado and I was up at 12,000, 13,000 feet. And when I found out that I drew the tag, I'm like, man, that's gonna suck. I ended up losing about 50 pounds in a couple of months. And it was just, diet, running, fasting. And I just felt so good after that I just kind of maintained that, and I've been eating keto and stuff like that. So it kind of seems like I don't really have those crashes anymore and stuff like that. I mean, it's really helped me out quite a bit as far as, like it's just been a pretty good way of life that I came across, but for me, I was able to go up there and I had a stock just about every day that I was up there. And, it took me a while to get up and over and come down and all this other stuff. But, dude, it's, if you're not worried about your health, man, it'll bite you, man. It'll really bite you.
Yeah. And if you love doing it, like we love doing it, I mean, I look at my kids would be out of the house and I don't ever want to rush that. You know how it is. You got children. I don't ever want to, my youngest is 11. So in 7-8 years, he'll be out of the house. And I just don't want to rush it. That when I want to be I'm 65 years old, I want to be hunting with them and my grandkids, and I want to be able to enjoy it. Some of my friends that have let their health go, they don't get to enjoy it anymore. And I know it bothers them. And then some of my friends that are that age that still are healthy are still hauling up and down the mountains and doing stuff and enjoying life, and got so much life to live yet. So fitness is important. I think just even if it doesn't have anything to do with hunting, just staying healthy. And we look at this big scare we just had, with this Corona. Obviously anybody's at risk for it, but the people that are more unhealthy are more at risk for something like that. So the more that you can stay healthy, the better it is, better off you are.
Well, just to let you know, it's one of those things where, you're definitely right about that. And especially with this last scare, I don't know whether it's related or not. I didn't have the antibody test or anything, but March 20th, I had a heart attack. Just told my wife, hey, we got to go. I talked to my sister. She's like, yep, she was a nurse. Got to get to the hospital. And they checked some stuff. They gave me some nitro. They're like, okay, it's worse than we thought. We're going to life flight you up to Tucson. Like, it's like, this is the healthiest that I've been in a long time. It's like, what the heck is going on, Get up there. They put the thing to rotor your arteries and stuff like that. And doctor, I'm looking at the screen and go through, nothing. No blockage, no nothing. Okay, so they're like, well, let's go get an MRI. Let's go get, an echo and this, that, and the other. Everything came back perfect. Perfect. I'm like, so it was Friday afternoon, and it was one of those things where I have another episode. I start having chest pains. It's like, hey, what's going on? Did an EKG, abnormal. gave me some morphine. And I think the morphine felt worse than the freaking actual symptoms that I was. And so turns out, you know, my blood pressure was real low. My pulse was real low for that night. And one of those things that just, I felt okay. But the next day my chest was kind of sore, but I was back to normal. And then they're like, well, we can't let you go because of, you know, the heart enzyme is still rising, the troponin. So we got to wait until it starts going down. I said, okay. And during this time frame, nobody can visit me. So, you know, I could talk to my wife, and that was about it. You know what I'm saying? It's like I had to make phone calls or whatever. So nobody could come in because of the COVID, because of coronavirus. And then, so I'm like, went to the doc, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, we don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? I mean, it's like, nope, we don't. We don't know what it is. Might have been a clot that was stuck in there, and then by the time he got over here, it was gone. Okay, so what happened the second time in the afternoon? I got another clot, and all of a sudden it dissolved too. And dude, after all this that we've been going through, it turns out that there's some people that the COVID will cause cardiovascular issues.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. So
you think that's what you had?
That's what I'm thinking. But Sunday morning, I was fine. Like nothing happened. My blood pressure was back to normal. Everything was like nothing happened. But I had a fever. And they're just like, yeah. So, you know, it's, you know, there was some other issues, you know, I mean, because I eat keto, you know, my cholesterol levels are a little bit off of what they should be.
Sure.
Like, you know, I just kept thinking to myself that if I wouldn't have lost the weight, if I wouldn't have been healthy, who knows where I would have been at, number one. Number two, it's like, well, you know, you got high cholesterol. I would have been on meds. Just seems like it's, you know, got to really take care of yourself. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
Luckily, I don't have any issues. I haven't had any problems. I mean, a week later, I was running. So
that is so wild. Well, I'll tell you, my advice I give everybody is this when it comes to fitness: get yourself in shape once and then just maintain it, manage it. We're our own managers. And I see people that get geared up for hunting, and this happens a lot in the Midwest because we don't have we've got big bluffs, but not big mountains, like higher elevation. So someone will draw an elk tag. So they'll lose 40, 50 pounds. They'll get in great shape and they'll go elk hunting, and they come back and then they let it all go. And then they'll do it again. I'm like, that's almost harder on your body than just letting it go all together. You know, that yo-yo, like just get in shape once and manage it. And the food that we eat makes such a difference. Exercise makes a difference. Everything we can do makes a difference. And you know, thank the good Lord, I haven't had any health challenges, but nobody's, you know, I can't take that for granted. I got to continue to work on it because I got a family and all those things. And when our health is in jeopardy, I think that's sometimes when we realize the most how important it is, because without it, it doesn't matter how much money you make or whatever, anything, because without the health, there's none of it makes a difference.
You know, and my wife, you know, she recorded a show for me. You know, it was a guy, he ate vegan. Not that I advocate being a vegan, obviously not, but he ran triathlons. I mean, he was just the epitome of fitness, and he had a heart attack because of that COVID. So it's one of those things where, you know, you can't put anything past yourself. You know what I mean? You got to stay on it. It was a little eye-opening experience for me at the very least, you know, but it's kind of scary when they're like, yeah, we don't know what happened.
Yeah. Well, thank God you're still here, man. There's a reason you're still here. That's how I always look at it. There's more you got yet to do. He didn't take you home, so there's more you got to do. I
think so.
Yeah. Well, man, Miguel, I'm just honored that you jumped on the podcast with me. We spent 2 hours together, just like that.
Oh,
so
really?
We've been. I said when we got started. So this is on YouTube as well, so you'll be able to see his bow and get to take a look at them and watch what we're doing here, but it'll be on podcast as well. But we talked for about 15 minutes probably at the beginning, and I'm like, let's just start talking, because normally, man, we get a bunch of good stuff at the beginning. I don't even get it recorded. And so I said, Big Mo, I said, hey, well, mind if we go about an hour? If it goes a little over, you okay with that? He goes, whenever you want to be done talking to me. But time flies when you're talking about things you love and just you're passionate about it. It goes fast. But I've enjoyed every moment of it. I was really looking forward to it because, as I said, I've been a big fan of yours from the outside. I've never got to personally meet you, but I get down in your neck of the woods. Maybe one day I'll be able to come out and at least spot for you and get to watch how you do it all. And
hey, that sounds good, man. I mean,
yeah.
I make a trip to Phoenix every now and again. Maybe we can get together, see if.
Heck yeah. We'll go out to eat, and we'll eat healthy food, and then we'll go shoot. And then we'll do all the things we do. And yeah, we'll share the mountain with you one day. I love sharing the mountain with good people that know what they're doing and respect every aspect of it. So it's been a pleasure having you on, buddy. I really appreciate it. And I'll tell all the listeners, make sure you follow him on Instagram at BigMo101. And then you're also on Facebook as well, Miguel Morales, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So make sure you follow him and go through and like all his photos, because he's a world-class killing machine. And it's great having guys like you that are willing to share some knowledge, tips, tactics, and gear with other people to help them out. So I appreciate you, Miguel.
No, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on here, man. I do appreciate it.
All right, buddy. And we'll talk to you soon. We'll see you on the mountain, all right?
Sounds good.
God bless you, buddy.